Hello and welcome back to another episode of Raw and Real with Stefanie Fernandes. I'm Stefanie, your podcast host, rapid transformational therapist, and founder of Your Freedom program. I work with women who want to take back their life, returning to themselves on their healing journey. In this podcast, we give the stage to women who overcame adversity and trauma or difficult phases in their life. Be ready to get raw emotions from real people. The stories we share here are to inspire women just like you that anything is possible. In today's episode, we will be talking about walking away from an abusive relationship. Emotional abuse can involve verbal abuse, like yelling at you, insulting you, or swearing at you. It can also be rejection, manifesting in constantly rejecting your thoughts, ideas, and opinions. Gaslighting is another example, making you doubt your own feelings and thoughts, and even your sanity, by manipulating the truth. My guest today is Lynette Robinson. Lynette took the brave and very scary decision to walk away from an emotionally abusive relationship. Today, Lynette is an entrepreneur and a business coach who specializes in helping entrepreneurs to create the life and business of their dreams. Hello, Lynette, and welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here today.
Thank you so much for coming forward and sharing your story with us today. So you managed to walk away from an emotionally abusive relationship. Please tell us your story.
Yeah, so I think I'll just frame it like this. I think one of the most challenging things about my particular circumstance was that from like an outsider's perspective, on the outside looking in, everything looked totally perfect and normal and, picket fence-ish. And honestly, like I was a co-creator in that. I had worked really hard to make it seem like everything was great. Even though for years inside of my relationship, I had really been struggling. I had really, I had felt like very alone. And my former spouse my ex-husband had gone through great lengths to really make me separate me from my family and make me feel ostracized. And it was hard because it was like a kind of like typical cyclical thing where it's like things are great and you think it's fine, and then it's not, and then and the piece about gaslighting always feels really resonant for me because it took me a long time to come to terms with the fact that like I wasn't going to be able to change the dynamic, and I really tried because I come from a very conservative, faith-based background where, you don't get divorced. Like you don't, like you're married and you're married, like the end. And I'll say this, like, I really believe divorce should be like your last option. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. It's so hard and so painful, but sometimes it really is the best choice. And I came to a point where I knew that I had really tried everything that I could think of to change the dynamic in the relationship. And I had this moment where I really felt like if I don't leave this situation, like the person that I am inside is never coming back. It was like, oh my gosh, like, and it was such a hard choice because you're like, well, do I choose to live as a shell of myself and just like let that part of me die and just like suck it up and like make it work? Or do I do like the really hard and scary thing of making a new path and saying enough is enough? And it ended up being like way harder than I thought it was going to be because so many people are like, your relationship is like perfect, it's idyllic. And I'm like, no, dude, like inside of my relationship, there was just like so much emotional neglect, and it was not a good situation. And and like you said, we're talking about gaslighting, like so much of it was made to be like, well, like you're doing this. And it's like, well, that's not really how this works. And I'm so grateful for the counselors that I've had along the way, like during that process and even and afterwards, that have really helped me reframe exactly what was going on there and help me get some language to adequately describe exactly what was happening, and to also help me see the parts that were not my responsibility, because I definitely lean towards like taking responsibility for all of my stuff and then some. And I think it has been really helpful to have people along the way who can kind of, with an outsider's perspective, help you look in and see and say like, hey, like, have you looked at it this way? And so that was really helpful. And I'm so grateful for that experience. I mean, there's so much to talk about and so much to unpack inside of what I experienced. But I think one of the biggest takeaways for me was that I don't have to be defined by that experience. I remember going through the process and it just being so hard and so heavy and really, like I said, just like so much worse than I could have anticipated. And I just had this moment where I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, okay, Lynette, like you can either choose to be defined by this or you can be refined by this. And that was a turning point for me that really has helped me so much in the life that I've created since then, to continue just to say like, everything that we walk through, you can take it and you can use it for good, and you can let those be lessons learned, and you can empower yourself and other people through your story, through your hardships. I oftentimes say that, it's like our pain, our past pain has the potential to unlock someone else's purpose. And we have to be willing to lean into that tension of identifying and acknowledging and sharing our stories and those past pain points and the lessons that we've learned from that, because it's going to help someone else. And that's part of why I'm happy to come and share on this podcast today, is because maybe there's someone out there who's in a relationship with someone who's not being physically abusive to them, but there's like emotional abuse and neglect and things that are happening inside the relationship that just aren't okay. And the partner isn't really demonstrating willingness to lean into you to make that change. And that was my circumstance. And I realized that, well, I get the opportunity to make a different choice. So
yeah, it sounds like you really grew from the experience, which is something that many don't know how. Like, how do you grow from such an adverse experience like you have experienced? What would you say impacted you the most? Like, how did it impact your life, like while you were there and the years to come?
Oh my gosh, that's such a good question. I'll just say this, like, there are so many relationships that I lost because of that. So many lies that were told about me from my ex-partner to basically anyone who would listen. And it really was very damaging. And not only to my own like personal like emotions and psyche, but like to my credibility, to so many things. And I think you can allow something like that to make you feel like, well, oh, well, like, this is it. I guess this is my life now. Or you can acknowledge that it sucks. It like totally is horrible. It's like the worst. But like choose to move in a different direction. And I was very sad over the relationships, like friendships outside of my marriage that I lost as a result of the choice to walk away from a relationship that was extremely toxic and was like literally emotionally killing me. Like what's interesting is that like I look back and I was having some like very interesting health issues like at the same time. And all of those health issues resolved once I finally left that relationship. And
such
like
an impact.
Yes. And I've had so many people, doctors and counselors that I've talked to, and people who are both like very in the scientific realm and more in the kind of like natural healer realm, say, you know, very clearly say like these issues that you were dealing with were a physical manifestation of what was happening inside of your life and your relationship. And I guess I share that because it's like, it was really bad. It was a bad situation. And I couldn't really have imagined that I would like also lose friendships and people that I thought were really close to me as a result. And it can feel so heavy and it can feel so hard. And I cried so many tears and I felt all of the feelings, every single one of them. And I think that's one of the keys, is that like you have to allow yourself to space to feel all the way through what it is that you're going through. I think we really have this tendency to want to circumvent hard emotions instead of equipping ourselves with the tools and the support systems to walk through those emotions to the other side. Because I really believe that our emotions are a gift. Like they're a gift for us to help guide us and like direct us. So we can't let them, you know, drive the operation. But if we ignore them completely, we miss out on a lot of really important information that we can use to move ourselves to the next level in our life. And so I think the first key is get a support system and tools that are going to help you move all the way through your feelings. Because if you don't move through them, they're going to come back. They're going to come back for you at some other point. So that's one thing. And I think the other thing is really just making a very clear decision. And I like you said, I'm a business coach and consultant. And so a lot of what I work with people on is inside of their businesses and helping them get to the next level inside of their business. But so much of what I teach from a kind of mindset and perspective comes from this experience of knowing like I must decide. Like the root word of decide means to cut off. Like you have to be willing to say no to all of these things so that you can say yes to this one other thing. And I frame it like this. It's like if I can say my best yes, if I can say my truest, most resounding yes to one thing, I can really decide. It does mean I'm going to say no to all these other things. But in saying yes to this one thing, it allows me to give it focus and to borrow a term from Napoleon Hill, a definiteness of purpose towards that thing that's going to unlock my potential to actually accomplish that. And so I think it's those two things, like allowing yourself, if you're going through a hard season and a hard moment, you're walking through your own trauma, or you're making the brave choice to step out of a toxic relationship, don't rush yourself in getting through those emotions. Like, do the work. I can't even tell you the number of books I've read, and get a counselor, get people around you. It's critical because like you're not meant to do that journey alone. And then really decide what it is that you want on the other side of that. Like you really just like deep inside of your bones, like, no, okay, this is what I want, because that clarity is going to help propel you on those days when you just feel like you can't. You're just like, I just want to hide under the covers, and you're like, on those days, like that clarity is going to help you continue to do the emotional work and to take the practical steps that are going to get you to that next step in your life, your business, whatever it is that you are trying to build towards.
It sounds like you were really in a process of awakening and becoming conscious of what's happening with yourself. And I think, as you just said, often women, we lose can just talk about from my own perspective. If there is someone that gaslights, I was in a relationship where this also happened. You start doubting that what you feel and your intuition and your gut feeling is wrong. And we carry that over to so many aspects in our life. It's not then only the relationship, but it manifests at work, with friends, like with the simplest decisions. We feel I'm not valuable, I'm not worth it, I can actually not do this. And this is the biggest harm that can happen to a woman. And when we feel like we lose completely control of our own life and becoming aware, I love how you just put that, that you are allowing yourself to feel all the feelings that are there.
Yeah.
Because only then you can work through it.
Yes.
And when you look back, if you could meet the Lynette from back then, what would you tell her with all the things you know today?
Oh my gosh, it's such a good question, but it's such a hard question, because there's a part of me that really believes that so much of the strength that I have today is, how do you say this? Like, some things are forged in the fire. Then that's just how it is. And it's not that I believe that like we have to experience hardship in order to have breakthrough. I don't believe that at all. But I do know that in some circumstances, like certain things are forged in the fire. And so as hard as so much of that stuff was, and as hard as, oh my gosh, so many of those things were, I don't know that it's like I have regret. I don't have regret about staying as long as I did, because like I stayed a really long time, longer than I should have. But the life that I have now and the family that I have now is so amazing. It's so beautiful. And it's like, I wouldn't want to undo any of that. But the one like very practical thing I might tell myself is, and this is part of actually why I love doing what I do in coaching. I coach predominantly women, not all women, but is this financial freedom piece, because I'm a very like naturally like very trusting person. And even though I knew that I needed to leave the relationship and I knew that it was like toxic and bad, there was still a part of me that felt like maybe in the uncoupling, it would be like fair and like kind and humane. It was not. And one of the things that really happened was that I didn't have any access to finances. And I didn't really have, because of like my particular circumstance, I didn't like during my divorce, I didn't really have access to almost any money. And so I am very passionate about like helping people develop financial freedom and to create financial wealth like on their own terms. And I think for me, and I did some of this, but I didn't do it to the depth or degree that I definitely needed to. Because like you shouldn't be in a situation like I was, where I had like put away like a tiny bit of money. And to make an extremely long story short, I owned a business with my ex-husband and now ex-business partner. And the business, I worked full-time inside of the business, and the business was meant to pay me a salary. And so I had kind of in my mind planned that I would have like this salary, but they chose in that process to not pay me. So I didn't have, and then also my ex-husband, he moved all of the funds. So like I didn't have access to any money. And so I was like in this place where I was having to decide like what meal to eat in the day. It was horrible. And like nobody should be in that position when they have the means to create financial wealth and freedom. And that's why it's like multiple streams of income, I think, are really important. Being really savvy about how you use your time and like make money and all those things. And I think one of the powerful things about being an entrepreneur is that you can create those multiple streams of income. You can create, more than one way that you're earning income. And I think if I could have said to Lynette back then, like, don't wait to make those extra streams of income, because what you think is going to be coming to you is not going to be coming to you. And that was a really hard lesson to learn, because I mean, there was no recourse for me. Like, I didn't have any other options. I just had to, like, be really skinny for a while. So, and it was hard. It was really hard. And again, like, nobody really knew what was going on. It's only been like in the last couple of years that, like, I've shared that portion of the story. 'Cause it's like, I didn't, especially then, and even now, like, I didn't want it to be some like big sob story, like, oh, he's doing this horrible thing. Like, yeah, it's a really horrible thing to know. Like, they both knew what they were doing. Like, they knew that by in not paying me, I'd have no income. And I think the intention was to try to, like, force me to come back. But I was like, cool, I'd rather starve, but thank you. And, but I think if I could have, like, gone back and talked to myself, I would have said, just make sure that you have multiple streams of income. Like, be strategic in how you are building wealth. And so that's part of what I do now, is I help people build multiple streams of income and build their online businesses so that they can earn income anywhere, anytime.
Yeah, I love how you use your personal experience in your own business now and helping women. And it sounds like a very holistic approach towards setting up a business as an entrepreneur, because you are your business. There's just one person. It's you. And if you are not well with yourself, if you are not clear with what you want in your life and in your business, this will impact your business. So I love how you see your client, that might be the woman in that particular situation, to help her to really develop that business of her dreams and create the life that they want. And what would you say is the biggest reason that holds back women to creating the life that they want?
That's a really good question. Yeah, I think there's a couple things. I think that oftentimes we believe a lie that it's like, we can't, or there's not enough of this or that or the other thing. But again, it comes back to the power of decision making. And when we really set our minds to something, almost nothing is truly impossible when we've really truly decided. And I think what happens sometimes is that we're like, well, yeah, but I've decided in the past and then it didn't work out. But what you have to ask yourself is like, okay, but did you really like cut off other options and say, like, enough of this and only this? Did you really do that? And I think oftentimes the answer is no. And I know that because I've been in that place before, where I'm like, oh yeah, like I've decided to do this. And then you like maybe make a little success, and then one hard thing comes and you're like, and you scurry off. But if you've really decided you are going to be so rock solid and certain in your decision making and in what you do, that it, come what may. And I think that's a really important part. I'll say this too. I think sometimes what's interesting is, like, inside of that, we sometimes forget that we are whole people. And so we think, so again, like, I help women who in business, well, people in business, but a lot of women, and I love it. It's so special. And we sometimes think, well, if I'm building my business, then I'm not doing these other things. And it's like, well, yes and no, but like you're saying, you are so much a part of your business. If you are not a whole person, it's going to be very difficult for you to create a whole brand, a whole business, a whole functional, thriving anything. And so one of the things that I really focus on inside of my program is helping people pursue work-life harmony. I don't really believe in work-life balance. I believe in work-life harmony. And and I could spend so much time talking about that, but inside of work-life harmony, like we're really thinking of it from a more holistic point of view. And because the truth of the matter is that there will be seasons of our life where one thing has more of our attention than the other. And then it's going to ebb and flow. And that's okay. It's okay. Like that, but it's about creating harmony that you can live with, because that's how we thrive, is that when we have harmony inside of ourselves, inside of our lives, that's when we really flourish. And I think so many times we get in our own way by just like thinking, oh, well, I can't, or what about this? And it's like, hang on, just take a breath. It's going to be okay. Decide what it is that you really want, and then figure out a strategy and a system that's going to support that for your whole person, for all the things that are important to you. Because for example, like, I love my business. It's so rad. It's so fun. I love helping people. I love seeing people grow and thrive inside of their business. But I am not going to be doing that at the expense of spending time with my son or my husband or my family. Like, I can do all of those things because I am all of those things. And I know that I can show up better inside of my business when I've had really good quality time with my family. And I know that I can show up for my family when I am feeling really satisfied and clear inside of my business goals and like what's happening inside of my work life. So I don't know if that completely answers your question, but I'm a big believer in working towards that work-life harmony.
Yeah, I love how you just put that, because it also opens the door to a topic of self-care, which we really need to be aware of when we start our own business, when we are the ones deciding how much time we spend on which task and when we do that. So thank you so much for sharing your story today with us, Lynette.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Shining your light today means so much for so many women out there who are in an abusive relationship at the moment. And I'm convinced that your story will give them strength and hope that they can get out.
Yeah.
And guys, if you would like to connect with Lynette, head over to her website, successacceleratorlife.com, and check out her program. It sounds like the perfect program for women who would like to boost their entrepreneurial spirit and to know which steps to take so that they can succeed. Guys, if you like this episode, give me a like and a review and share it with anyone you think can benefit from listening to Lynette's story. Until next time, at Raw and Real with Stefanie. Bye now.